I currently live in Louisiana, but a while back I spent a few days in Austin, Texas, visiting some old college friends. It's a long drive, taking up most of the day, just endless stretches of highway and heat. On my last day in Austin, I posted a photo on my Instagram story. Almost immediately, an old friend from high school named Tom replied. He asked when I was leaving, and I told him, today, actually. He messaged back saying he lived about an hour outside of Austin, in a small town that happened to be directly on my route home. He suggested I stop by for a drink. Since we hadn't seen each other in years, I thought it would be a nice way to break up the drive. I set my GPS for his address. It estimated about an hour and a half. Tom and I had lost touch after graduation. We were the kind of friends who liked each other's posts but never really spoke. So I was looking forward to reconnecting. When I pulled up to his place, the sun was starting to set. His house had a charming, old-fashioned vibe. It wasn't run down, but it was definitely aged, sitting on a large plot of land surrounded by trees. The wooden porch creaked loudly under my feet as I walked to the door. Tom greeted me with a massive bear hug. He looked exactly the same, just with a beard. The inside of the house matched the exterior, rustic, filled with heavy wooden furniture that looked like it belonged in the 1970s. Every step on the hardwood floors produced a groan or a creak. We sat in his living room pouring whiskey and catching up on the last decade of our lives. One drink turned into two, then three. Before I knew it, the sun was down, the room was dim, and I was feeling pretty buzzed. The alcohol made everything feel warm and cozy, masking how tired I really was. Hours flew by. Eventually, Tom looked at me and said, "Man, you're in no shape to drive back to Louisiana tonight. Why don't you just crash here?" I hesitated for a second, but my eyelids were heavy. He was right. "I've got a spare bedroom down the hall," he offered. "It's nothing fancy, but it's a bed." We ordered some greasy Chinese food, ate it straight out of the cartons, and then he showed me to the room. I was too drunk to pay much attention to the details, but I remember the air in the room felt heavy and still, like the door hadn't been opened in months. It was musty. I stripped off my jeans, collapsed onto the bed, and passed out almost immediately. Sometime in the dead of night, I woke up. I don't know what roused me. Maybe a noise, maybe just thirst. My mouth was dry as sandpaper. The room was pitch black, save for a thin sliver of moonlight cutting through the blinds. I rolled over, trying to get comfortable, and that's when I saw it. In the far corner of the room, standing against the closet door, was something dark. At first glance, my brain rationalized it. It's just a coat rack, I thought. Just a long black trench coat hanging up. I squinted, trying to focus my blurry eyes. But as my eyes adjusted to the gloom, the shape felt wrong. It had broad, distinct shoulders. The way it hung didn't look like fabric draping over a hook. It looked like a solid mass. It looked like the silhouette of a large man standing perfectly still. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to remember walking into the room earlier. Had I seen a coat rack? I couldn't recall. I had been too drunk. "You're just wasted," I told myself. "It's pareidolia. Your brain is making shapes out of shadows." I rolled over, facing the wall, squeezing my eyes shut. But the feeling of being watched was intense. It felt like eyes were boring into the back of my skull. I forced myself to drift back into a shallow, uneasy sleep. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe an hour, maybe 3, before I woke up again. This time it wasn't thirst that woke me. It was a sound, a slow, deliberate creak. It was the sound of weight shifting on old floorboards. My eyes shot open. The room was lighter now. The gray-blue light of dawn was seeping in. I held my breath, terrified to move. Slowly, I turned my head toward the corner. My stomach dropped through the floor. The corner was empty. I sat up so fast my head spun. Panic and adrenaline burned through my hangover. I scanned the entire room. There was just a bare wall and a white closet door. There was no coat rack. There was no trench coat. There was nothing that could have cast that shadow. I threw off the covers and bolted out of the room. I rushed down the hall to Tom's bedroom and shook him awake. He groaned, confused and hungover. "What? What's wrong?" "The coat," I said, my voice trembling. "The coat in the spare room. Who was in there?" Tom rubbed his eyes, looking at me like I was insane. "What coat? Man, what are you talking about?" I explained what I saw. The tall, dark figure, the trench coat, the silhouette. Tom sat up, fully awake now. "Dude, I don't own a trench coat. And there is no furniture in that corner. It's empty." "Come look," I insisted. He followed me back to the spare room. I pointed to the spot. It was right there. I woke up and it was standing there. Then I heard a creak, woke up again, and it was gone. We stood in the silence of the morning, the air feeling colder than before. Tom finally agreed we should check the house. We searched every room, behind every door, even the attic. There was nothing. No signs of a break-in, no muddy footprints, no strange coats. Tom tried to convince me it was a night terror or a drunken hallucination. "The whiskey got to you, man," he said with a nervous laugh. Part of me wanted to believe him, but the other part of me remembered the distinct shape of shoulders and the sound of that floorboard creaking. I packed my bag in record time. I didn't want to be in that house for another second. I said a quick goodbye to Tom, feeling guilty for leaving him alone, but too scared to stay. The entire drive back to Louisiana, I couldn't shake the image of that figure. I keep telling myself it was a dream, but deep down, I wonder if someone had been in that room with me, standing in the dark, watching me sleep, waiting for me to wake up before they slipped away into the shadows. This happened when I was 16 years old. I didn't have my own car yet, so my social life depended entirely on my parents or my own 2 feet. One Saturday night, my friend Haley was hosting a get-together while her parents were out of town. My mom drove me over. Haley lived close by, a quick 3-minute drive or about a 20-minute walk through the suburban streets. My mom was single at the time and had a date that night. As I got out of the car, she told me, "If I'm out late, just walk home or get a ride. Don't wait up." The night started fine. It was just us girls, Tina, Courtney, Belle, and me, hanging out in the backyard. But then Haley dropped a bomb. She had secretly invited some boys from school. This wouldn't have been a big deal, except one of them was Brandon, a guy I had a messy, awkward history with. I really didn't want to see him. When the boys showed up, the vibe changed immediately. It was awkward and uncomfortable. I tried to stick it out, but after an hour I was done. I decided to walk home. I texted Haley to let her know I was leaving, and that I was annoyed she invited Brandon without telling me. She texted back apologies, begging me to return, but I ignored her and started walking. It was late, the streets were quiet and dimly lit by orange street lamps. I had been walking for about 5 minutes when I heard a sound behind me. Scuff, scuff, footsteps. I slowed down, listening. The footsteps behind me slowed down too. I sped up. The footsteps sped up. I turned around. About half a block back, there was a man. He was middle-aged, wearing a hoodie with the hood up and his hands buried in his pockets. He was smiling, a wide, unnatural smile. "How you doing?" he called out. His voice was too loud for the empty street. "Hi," I said quickly, turning back around and walking faster. It wasn't unusual for people to be walking in our neighborhood, but something about him felt wrong. 5 minutes passed. I glanced over my shoulder again. He was still there, and he was closer now. My route home wasn't a straight line. I had to make several turns. Every time I turned a corner, I prayed he would keep going straight. But every time, he turned with me. I pulled out my phone and started texting my friends in the group chat. Guys, some creep is following me. Suddenly, his voice came from right behind me. Isn't it such a nice night? Love this weather. I flinched. He was much closer than I realized. Yeah, I muttered, not looking back, walking as fast as I could without running. Are you from the neighborhood? He asked. No, I lied. Just visiting. He chuckled, a low, dry sound that made my skin crawl. I frantically texted the group chat, "Send someone to pick me up now." Ironically, Brandon was the one who saw it and immediately left the party to come get me. Then the man said something that stopped my heart. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "You live by the elementary school, right?" I froze. He knew where I lived. I spun around to face him. He had stopped about 10 feet away. His smile had changed. It was no longer friendly. It was sinister. "Leave me alone," I screamed. I turned and sprinted. I heard his heavy boots hitting the pavement behind me. He was chasing me. "Help!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "Help me!" The man's facade dropped completely. "Shut up, you little bitch," he growled, reaching for me. Porch lights started flicking on in the houses around us. Seeing the lights, the man cursed, turned around, and bolted into the darkness between two houses. A couple came out onto their porch looking concerned. I ran to them, shaking and crying, explaining that a man was chasing me. They let me wait with them until Brandon's car screeched around the corner. I jumped into his passenger seat, locking the door. He drove me the rest of the way home. It was literally a minute away. My mom wasn't home yet, and I was too terrified to be alone, so I asked Brandon to come in. We sat in the living room, adrenaline still pumping, trying to calm down. My bedroom was upstairs, facing the backyard. Suddenly, we heard a sound from outside. Click, the latch of the back gate lifting, then heavy footsteps crunching on the dead leaves in the yard. My mom never used the back gate. We crept to the window and looked down into the dark yard. We couldn't see anything. Then a voice drifted up from the shadows below. "I see you up there," I gasped, jumping back from the window. Brandon yelled, "We're calling the cops, you freak!" We dialed 911 immediately. The realization hit me like a truck. He hadn't just followed me. He knew where I lived. He knew which window was mine. He had been stalking me long before tonight. The police arrived quickly, flooding the yard with flashlights, but the man was gone. My mom arrived shortly after, terrified when she saw the police cars. A patrol car stayed on our block for the rest of the night. From that day on, I never walked anywhere alone at night. My uncle installed high-vis security cameras all over the house to send a message, but the fear never left. My mom hated seeing me so scared in my own home. A year later, she sold the house, and we moved to a different part of town. We never found out who he was, but I know he's still out there. This happened a few years ago when I was 18. My parents, my friend Anna, and I were on a road trip through Sweden. It was supposed to be a fun family vacation. We had an 8-hour drive ahead of us to visit a famous theme park. The plan was to drive up, camp for the night, and hit the park first thing in the morning. We had brought 2 tents, so we needed a campsite. My dad, being the spontaneous type, hadn't booked anything in advance. He started calling around while driving, but it was bad news. Apparently, there was a massive youth soccer tournament in the area. Every single campsite within a 50-mile radius was fully booked or charging exorbitant prices. Our only option was wild camping. In Sweden, you're allowed to camp in nature as long as you're respectful. We set the GPS for a parking area near a nature reserve to avoid getting fined. When we arrived, the sun was setting. It was a secluded spot, just a small gravel parking lot surrounded by dense, tall pine trees. A beach was about a 10-minute walk through the woods. We asked a woman who was finishing her hike if it was safe. She smiled and said, "Oh, yes, it's very quiet. No parking attendants come here." That sealed the deal. As we unpacked the car, I noticed something odd. At the far end of the lot, parked in the shadows, was a beat-up sedan. It was empty, dark, and looked like it had been there a while. It gave me a weird feeling, but I shrugged it off. We set up our tents on a patch of grass near the trees, one tent for my parents and one for Anna and me. By 11 p.m., we were settled in. My parents were already snoring in their tent. Anna and I were lying in our sleeping bags, watching TikToks and whispering, trying to wind down. Around midnight, the silence of the forest was shattered. Clang! It was a loud metallic noise like heavy metal hitting gravel. Anna and I both froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, my heart starting to race. We lay in the dark, straining our ears. The sound came from the direction of the abandoned car. Then we heard a heavy thud, like a trunk being slammed shut. An engine roared to life. Tires spun on the gravel, spraying rocks, and the car sped out of the lot, driving aggressively fast. I pulled out my phone and texted a friend of mine who lived in the nearby city. I dropped a pin on our location and jokingly said, "If we die, we are here." He texted back immediately, "Get out of there. That beach is known for gang activity and drug drops. It's not safe at night." Reading that message made my blood run cold. I showed Anna, and we both huddled deeper into our sleeping bags, terrified. About 10 minutes of silence passed. We started to relax slightly, thinking whoever it was had left. Then from the woods right next to us, a sound erupted that I will never forget. It was a scream, a loud, agonizing, blood-curdling scream from a man. It sounded like someone being tortured. I grabbed my phone and texted my mom. "Did you hear that?" No reply. I called her. She answered, sounding groggy and annoyed. "What is it?" "Mom, there's someone screaming in the woods," I hissed. She sighed. "We didn't hear anything. You're just scaring yourself. Go to sleep." But I knew what we heard. Anna was shaking beside me. We turned off our phones to hide the light and lay in the pitch blackness, terrified to breathe. Suddenly we heard it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps on the gravel. Someone was walking toward our tents. The footsteps were slow and stealthy. They circled my parents' tent first, then they moved toward ours. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying they wouldn't stop. The footsteps stopped right outside our thin nylon wall. I could hear heavy, ragged breathing. Someone was standing inches away from my head, just listening to us. Then headlights swept across the tent fabric. The car was back. The person outside walked away toward the vehicle. I heard a car door slam, and the engine revved again. I gathered every ounce of courage I had and peeked through the mesh window. I saw the taillights of the beat-up sedan disappear down the dirt road. 5 minutes later, blue lights flashed through the trees. A police car came tearing down the road, chasing in the same direction the sedan had gone. We didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. As soon as the sun rose, we packed up in a panic. When I told my mom about the breathing, her face went pale. She admitted she had heard the footsteps but was too paralyzed by fear to answer me. Later, I looked up the news. A man had been murdered in those woods that night, stabbed to death over a gang debt. 2 other men had gone missing from that beach the same year. I still wonder about the metallic sound, the shovel, the trunk slamming. We were sleeping 10 yards away from a crime scene, and the killer had stood right outside my tent, listening to me breathe. This story still haunts me, even though I was only 6 years old when it happened. You know how childhood memories are usually blurry? This one is crystal clear, like a movie I can't turn off. I have an older brother named Keith, who was 8 at the time. We shared a large bedroom on the second floor of our house. My parents' room was downstairs on the first floor. My dad was strict, especially about bedtime. 8:30 p.m. was the cutoff. Lights out, no talking, no getting up. If we broke the rules, we were in big trouble. One night, I was dead asleep when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I woke up to Keith shaking me. The room was dark. "Wake up," he whispered urgently. "Be quiet and listen." I rubbed my eyes, confused. "What?" I whispered back. "Listen," he hissed. I strained my ears against the silence of the house. Then I heard it. From downstairs, drifting up the staircase, was my mom's voice. "Keith, Mikey," she called out. But it wasn't her normal voice. It was a harsh, strained whisper, like she was trying to yell without making a sound. "Come here. Come downstairs." I started to throw the covers off. "Mom's calling us," I said, swinging my legs out of bed. Keith grabbed my arm, digging his fingers in. "Stop," he said. "That's not Mom." I looked at him, annoyed. "Yes, it is. I hear her." I thought he was trying to trick me or scare me. I pulled away from him and walked to the bedroom door. I opened it a crack. The hallway was pitch black. I put my ear to the gap. "Boys!" the voice called again. It sounded exactly like her, but the tone was wrong. It was too flat, too rhythmic. "Come down. I have a surprise." "That's Mom," I insisted, turning back to Keith. Keith shook his head violently, his eyes wide with fear. "Mom doesn't call us like that. She would just come up here. Don't go." Being the stubborn little brother, I ignored him. I opened the door fully and crept into the hallway. I walked to the top of the stairs and peered down into the darkness of the living room. At the bottom of the stairs, standing in the gloom, was a silhouette. It looked like a person. It looked like a woman with long hair. I took a step down. "Mom!" The figure didn't move. It just stood there, rigid. Then the voice came again, not from the figure's mouth, but seemingly from the air around it. "Hi, sweetie. Come down here." A cold chill hit me. I realized instantly. That wasn't my mom. My mom was warm and soft. This thing felt cold and sharp. It felt like a predator wearing a disguise. I scrambled back, slammed the bedroom door and locked it. I ran to my bed and hid under the covers with Keith. I started crying. "You were right," I sobbed. "It's not her." We sat there for a minute, terrified, listening. Then we heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. Slow and deliberate. Keith grabbed my hand. "We have to wake Dad." On the count of 3, we started screaming at the top of our lungs. We stomped on the floorboards, screaming, "Dad! Dad! Help!" Within seconds, we heard the door downstairs burst open. My dad came charging up the stairs, shouting. He pounded on our door. "Boys, open up!" We unlocked it and threw ourselves at him. He was holding a baseball bat. My mom was right behind him, looking terrified and sleepy. "She was calling us," I cried. "The lady at the bottom of the stairs." My mom's face went white. "I wasn't calling you," she whispered. "I was asleep." My dad pushed us into the room with Mom and went to search the house. He checked every room, the basement, the backyard. He found the back door unlocked, slightly ajar. He never found anyone. But that night, my mom made us sleep in their room, and she locked the door, something she never did. The police came and took a report, but they treated it like a prank or a misunderstanding. But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. My parents still brush it off to this day, saying it was probably a dream. But sometimes I catch them looking at each other when we talk about it. They know. Someone broke in, stood at the bottom of the stairs, and tried to lure us down into the dark.